Hey everyone, Eric here. Thanks once again for joining me on WDIM News, where I talk about sci-fi movies and TV shows. This week we have the debut of Star Trek Picard Season 3. So we have a few things to talk about. We first have the premiere that happened in LA a few days ago, and also on the Star Trek Instagram site, they released these character logs that kind of catch us up on a lot of stuff that's been going on with the main characters and even some of the ships. And some of this stuff is really interesting, especially when they go in about what's been going on with the USS Titan, which in canon has only been shown a few times, but they fill in a lot of the blanks here and show that the USS Titan was really important to the history of the Federation, almost important, it seems, as the USS Enterprise. I also want to make 5 bold predictions about the upcoming season of Star Trek Picard, and I'm going to hold myself to those. So after the season, I'm going to come back and look at these 5 predictions and see how I did. And I also want to know what your predictions are for the 3rd season of Picard. And then outside of Star Trek Picard, also we had an interview with Matt Shakman, and he discussed his involvement with the 4th Star Trek film. If you don't remember who Matt Shakman was or is, he was the director that was the last director that was kind of assigned to the Star Trek film, and he left to do the upcoming Fantastic Four film for Marvel. So he discusses kind of his experience with Star Trek, as well as some kind of like a hope that maybe the Star Trek film is still in development. And finally, I want to talk about not just one, but 2 episodes of The Last of Us. Usually, I only get to talk about 1 episode because while these podcasts get released on Mondays, I record them on Sundays, so I always miss one. But thanks to the Super Bowl, we got 2 episodes of The Last of Us this week. So I'm going to talk about episodes 4 and 5, and also some like broader stuff about The Last of Us, how I think it's actually going to affect video game adaptations going forward. But first, let's talk about Star Trek Picard and these character logs that were released on Instagram. If you don't know anything about them, I'll leave a link to it in the description so you can check them out. I'm going to go over them briefly. There is more in them because each of them are about a minute long, but I kind of picked out some of the cool stuff. Honestly, it reminds me a lot of Star Trek Online, the way they handle this. A lot of times when you're in Star Trek Online, you get these logs about, missions or characters, and it really reminded me of that. So I don't know if they were going for that, but it was really cool to get, more character backstory along with new information about these characters. Like they go into, where they were born and, most of their highlights on whatever show they were on, along with stuff that's happened, recently that may have happened off screen. And I also noticed that they made it so it looks like we're looking at a terminal on the USS Titan A, which is supposed to be the main ship used this season on Star Trek Picard. And if you notice, it's Terminal 47, and 47 is a very common number used in Star Trek. I won't go into it because I could do a whole video on the number 47, but just Google 47 and Star Trek, and you'll see a lot of instances where the number 47 has been used. So that's a nice little callback right there. The first character that I want to talk about, because that's the one that I gravitated toward, was Lore. Of course, Lore is Data's brother. He's going to be played once again by Brent Spiner, and we don't know much about him. In the log, it really just goes over his appearances on Star Trek The Next Generation, how he was built by Noonien Soon, and how he was Data's brother, and how he had the emotion chip. One interesting line was this. It stated that Lore was last seen in 2370. This season of Picard happens in the 25th century. I don't know the exact date, but I think it's somewhere around 2403. So it's Lore was last seen in 2370 as the leader of a cult of former Borg drones. At that encounter, Data deactivated him for the final time. Lore's mind and body have since been taken to Starfleet's Daystrom station, along with the late Alton Soon's research. So the first thing to take away from this is Alton Soon, who was the character that Brent Spiner played in season 1 of Picard, has seemingly passed away at some point after season 1, which is kind of interesting because he's the one that developed the golem body, so to speak, that Picard uses now. So I don't know why he wouldn't just build himself one too if he can, build one for Picard. I guess this kind of shows us how rare, the golem body is. And I know that after season 1, a lot of critics were like, well, now does nobody have to die in the Star Trek universe because everybody can be downloaded into a robot? I guess if the guy who created it couldn't do it for himself, it's not that easy. And since the guy who created it passed away, and Girardi, who is the other person that helped with that procedure, is now like a new Borg queen, it doesn't look like we will be getting any more of these golems. So I guess that makes Picard pretty rare. Another thing that I thought was interesting from this is that lore, it mentions that he's been at the Daystrom station. And if you remember in season 1 of Picard, we saw that B4 was also at the Daystrom station, but they didn't mention lore. So it's kind of weird. But I also know that lore is going to appear in a comic book, Star Trek Defiant, that is coming out pretty soon. And that takes place after 2370. So I wonder if that's a classified mission. I wonder if that's a sign that that comic book is maybe not canon. I don't know. But I thought that was kind of interesting that they said that lore has been at Daystrom Station this whole time, along with Alton Soon's research, when there seems to be an adventure for him somewhere in there. But there's a lot of classified stuff in here that I'm going to talk about, so maybe that's going to be part of it. The next character I looked at was Picard. And basically, it was a lot of just his normal backstory, along with what has occurred on the Picard series. It stated, that he was captain of 2 enterprises. It talked about his role in the Romulan evacuation and then his death and rebirth. But one thing that I think was new, I don't know if this was mentioned before, it mentioned that he was Chancellor of Starfleet Academy. I don't remember that being a thing, so that might be new for this season. Like it's happened since the last season of Picard. And it might also be a hint towards the future of where this franchise is going. There have been rumors of a Starfleet Academy series in the past 2 years, so maybe this is going to lead into something like that. And it could allow for Patrick Stewart to, maybe come back on a new series, not as a starring role, maybe in a lesser role than what Kate Mulgrew is doing on Prodigy right now. But I did think that was interesting. So it looks like before this season, Picard will be Chancellor of Starfleet Academy. The next character I looked at was Dr. Crusher. Again, it went into a lot of her backstory, a lot of her personal details with Picard. You probably wouldn't expect to see that in a military record, but again, this is supposed to be for the season, so that's why they did it. One interesting line that I picked out was that she later resigned from Starfleet. So eventually, Dr. Crusher resigns from Starfleet, and she was undertaking private medical missions throughout the Alpha and Beta quadrants on her personal ship, the SS Ilios. Dr. Crusher's current whereabouts are unknown. So we've heard that she's on this like Doctors Without Borders kind of mission leading up to this season. So this is kind of filling in the blanks to that. It doesn't mention her son really at all. It mentions that she has a son named Wesley, but it doesn't really go into the fact that he turned into a traveler and stuff like that, which I thought was interesting. Of course, Will Wheaton appeared as Wesley Crusher last season on Picard. And as I mentioned, it did go into a lot of personal stuff about like how she first met Picard while she was on the Stargazer and how, they served together again on the Enterprise. Everybody is looking forward to, her returning and how she is going to interact with Jean-Luc Picard and if they're going to finally get together as a relationship. I think that's definitely where it's going to go. I think that if it doesn't go there, it'll be a huge letdown for the fan base. So I don't think they're going to do that. And I think that, we're definitely going to start the season off with Picard, answering a distress call from her, looking for her, using his friends from the crew of the old Enterprise and trying to find Dr. Beverly Crusher wherever she may be. The next character that I looked at was Captain Riker. But Riker's log here starts with what happened in season 1 where, Riker returned to active duty in 2399, leading a fleet of Starfleet vessels to protect Jean-Luc Picard and the synth homeworld, Capelius, from Romulan attack. He continues his role in Starfleet, having most recently lent his expertise on the new Titan refit. We're going to get into the Titan in a little bit, but again, this is basically just, what we already know about him from season 1 and season 2 of Picard. And then, of course, now leading up to this season 3, it looks like he's been serving on the Titan as, some kind of specialist, probably because he used to be one of the captains of the Titan. His wife, Commander Deanna Troi, it states that she continues to hold a rank within Starfleet should her expertise be needed. So she's, not retired, but is retired, kind of like how she is, how the actress is with acting. I don't think she's appearing in anything else besides Picard. So she's kind of like half retired from her acting life. And we're going to talk about Troi a little bit later when I talk about my predictions. But I think that both her and Riker are going to be very important to this season. Next, I looked at Captain Worf. He's a character that a lot of people are wondering about. he had appeared in a comic book this year. I'll link to that video as well in the description if you want to check it out. It kind of talks about what happened with him after he left DS9 and before he rejoined the Enterprise E, which this log briefly talks about. So the log states that following his brief tenure as a diplomat, Worf returned to Starfleet, serving aboard the USS Enterprise E and in other assignments that resulted in his promotion to the rank of captain. His time aboard the Enterprise E was brief, having stepped down after the incident above Crelir Prime. Worf's whereabouts since then are classified. I'm kind of unsure if it states here that Worf was briefly captain of the Enterprise, because it states that he was promoted to captain, and then it says that his tenure aboard the Enterprise E was brief. So I guess that means that he was the captain of the Enterprise E after Captain Picard stepped down to lead the Romulan evacuation. That's kind of interesting. I don't think that was mentioned before. It has been mentioned that Worf's backstory will be tied to the Dominion War that occurred in DS9, and I wonder if that is something that has to do with the incident above Crelar Prime. I don't remember that ever being mentioned before. Let me know in the comments if I'm wrong, but that doesn't ring a bell to me. Next, we have Commodore LaForge. Now, a lot of his stuff has already been released through like the Comic-Cons and stuff like that, but it does have some interesting information here. So what I latched onto was later LaForge received the rank of Commodore and was given a series of special assignments by Starfleet Command. His daughters Sydney and Alondra LaForge also currently serve in Starfleet, and we've seen both of them in trailers. Alondra is played by LeVar Burton's actual daughter, so that is really cool. Also in the log, it talks about LaForge's first meeting with Picard, which apparently happened while LaForge was piloting a shuttle during an inspection. Was that ever talked about on The Next Generation? I'm not sure. If that was, let me know in the comments. It also states that he was born in Somalia. I don't remember that ever being a part of canon before. The log also goes over how LaForge started as the Enterprise helmsman, which a lot of people tend to forget, and then transferred to engineering. And also, I think it's cool, and I've mentioned this before, that Sydney and Alondra, his daughter's names, they were also his daughter's names in the alternate timeline shown in the original Next Generation finale, All Good Things. So it's pretty cool that they kept that continuity. LaForge in all the trailers, to me, doesn't look very happy with Picard. I don't know, maybe something else happened between LaForge and Picard during this time that made them kind of adversarial, because every time we see LaForge's face in those trailers, he doesn't look very happy. I think it's really cool that they allowed his actual daughter to play his daughter. She's been very involved in like Star Trek stuff in the past, so it'll be cool to see her on screen. And her sister Sydney on screen looks at one point in the trailer to be roughed up by the attackers. So hopefully she makes out of the season okay. Maybe that's why LaForge isn't in such a good mood, if his daughter's been captured by whomever is chasing Picard. So we'll see if that happens. That's not one of my predictions. We'll get to those in a little bit, but I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what happens with LaForge as well. So that pretty much covers the Next Generation characters. Now let's talk about a few of the other characters, specifically Seven and Raffi. So with Seven, besides her normal backstory, it does confirm that with help from Admirals Picard and Janeway, Seven received a Starfleet commission. She currently serves as first officer on the USS Titan A under the command of Captain Liam Shaw, and we met Captain Liam Shaw in the final trailer. He's played by Todd Stashwick. And it's rumored that Seven and Captain Liam Shaw will not get along, and that it has something to do with her past as a Borg, which is interesting because that kind of mirrors how Sisko did not really respect Picard at first because of Sisko's experience with the Borg prior to their meeting. So we'll see. I mentioned this in a prior podcast, that it seems like since the end of the last season of Picard, Seven's life has gone up and Raffi's life has gone the other way. So next, let's talk about Raffi. Like I said, Raffi looks like she's had a hard go of it since the end of the last season of Picard. Her log is kind of weird because it starts by saying that her personal details are classified, and then a little bit later, it says for years she has worked to overcome several addictions that plagued her life and Starfleet career, with the hope that she might reconnect with her son Gabe and his family. So if it's not going to talk about her personal details, why bring up her drug addiction and her son Gabe and his family? But it does state that her current status is classified and that she has left Starfleet entirely. Her present whereabouts are unknown. A log about the La Serena reveals, though, that after Seven went back to Starfleet, that Rafi was given command of the alternate version of the La Serena. That's the one with the red paint. The original version of the La Serena was taken by the new version of Girardi, the Borg version of Girardi. The red version is all that remains of the alternate timeline that was created in the second season of Picard. So it's kind of cool to know that that's still around. I think actually we see it in one of the trailers. But yeah, it seems like her and Worf might have a storyline together. Of course, both of their whereabouts are unknown and their status is classified, so that kind of ties them together a little bit. And in the trailers, we've seen them fighting one another. We've also seen her. We've also seen Rafi, scan her eye with something, which many people have guessed that that's probably drug use of some sort. Seven and Rafi, their relationship seemed very strong at the end of the second season, and now I don't know where they stand. It looks like they're in totally different places. So it looks like that relationship is probably over, and maybe they'll have to reconnect this season. But yeah, hopefully Rafi, has a better luck of it going into the season than she has since the season ended. So next, I want to talk about the Enterprise and the Titan. So they discuss the USS Enterprise, and they go through all of the Enterprises, all the way back to the NX Enterprise with Jonathan Archer. They end on the USS Enterprise F, which we have seen in the trailers already, and they said it's an Odyssey class launched in 2386, commanded by several captains in the past 15 years, currently scheduled for decommissioning after the critical systems were compromised during the Mon Fet Gambit, the rescue efforts for the Raelian refugees on Fenton 4. The Enterprise F's final flight will be on display during this year's Frontier Day. Frontier Day, I think, is a new holiday. I don't think that that's ever been mentioned before in Star Trek. The Mon Fet Gambit is probably a reference to Christopher Monfett, who is an executive producer on Picard. I don't recognize Raelian refugees or Fenton 4 either, but let me know in the comments if I'm wrong about that. But yeah, the Enterprise log is pretty long because, like I stated, talks about all the ships and all the captains. So it's kind of interesting to take that look down memory lane. It talks about the B and the C, which only appeared very briefly. The B in a movie, the C in a episode of The Next Generation. So it was a good listen, but I'm not going to go into it here because if you're watching this, you probably know all about the Enterprise's history. I did think that it was interesting that it said that the Enterprise's final flight will be on display. I'm going to talk about the Enterprise F again in my predictions, but kind of remember that. And then it talks about the USS Titan. Now, a lot of this is new, so I'm going to read off a lot here because, like I stated, a lot of this is really interesting. So it starts with the Shangri-La class, launched in 2290 under the command of Captain Savick. Savick, of course, was played by the late Christy Alley and Robin Curtis. I thought that this was nice. They probably did this as an homage to Christy Alley because she's passed away recently. So I thought that was pretty nice. Then it goes on to say, known for its multiple encounters with the Klingon Empire, including the Exoport takeover and Horizon Colony rescue. The Titan became Starfleet's flagship under the recommendation of Captain Sulu of the Excelsior. So basically, after the Star Trek Kirk crew stories were over, the Titan was the Enterprise of Starfleet. The Titan was instrumental in maintaining frontier stability before the Kittimore Accords and the subsequent launch of the Enterprise B. Because of Captains Savick and Riker, the Titan's legacy was continued with a brand new starship, one that would retain its registry, but now with the A designation, an honor only given to select few starships. NCC 80102A Constitution 3 class, referred to in Starfleet slang as the Neo Constitution class. This new Titan is primarily an exploratory vessel, honoring the retro design of the Constitution Class 2, launched in 2402 under the command of Captain Liam Shaw, the captain we meet in this season. Work began on a refit using the original Titan space frame. However, with the development of cutting-edge technology, the Titan's design changed mid-construction and a new ship took form. As per tradition, Starfleet engineers affectionately designated as a refit, having kept much of the original Titan's internal components. The Constitution 3 was designed to cater to a close support envelope at sublight speeds, namely in and around densely populated solar systems, as witnessed by its overpowered impulse engines. To date, the new Titan has the largest sublight power to geometry ratio in the fleet. Now, I think the biggest takeaway out of this is that it looks like during the refit, things were changed midstream. Now, I don't know if this is because of the events of the second season of Picard, and maybe Starfleet gained knowledge of new technology because of their encounter with the new version of the Borg, or I think this may be a sign that part of the season will be about out with the old, in with the new. It seemed like in the last trailer for Picard that the captain of the Titan didn't really appreciate the appearance of Picard and Riker on his ship. And it seems like he's not very impressed with them and is impressed with himself and his new vessel. So I think that that might be part of the storyline this season, that a lot of people maybe don't respect the crew of the Enterprise D as much as we would expect and are ready to move on. This might also be prevalent in Geordi's relationship with his daughters. Maybe one holds on to the past, and the one that serves on the Titan, is one of these like out with the old, in with the new kind of officers. We've seen this before. I know that when the Enterprise B was launched and the USS Excelsior, both of those captains felt the same way, that their new ships were much superior to the old ships, and we're going to do great things. So I think that that's kind of a hint that that storyline is going to be prevalent this season. But I thought it was really interesting that they really added to the importance of the USS Titan. Not only was it captained by Riker, but that it's really the impromptu Enterprise when the Enterprise isn't around. And of course, now we're running into a situation this season where the Enterprise F is going to be decommissioned. So that might mean that now the new flagship will be this new version of the Titan, and Captain Liam Shaw kind of wants to keep that going. So again, kind of a hint at what we can expect to see in the early season of the third season of Picard. Again, I encourage you, if you have the time, to check out those logs. They're really cool. It gives you a good, it kind of tells you the story points that are probably prevalent to these characters going into the third season of Picard. A lot of things have happened for these characters, and not everything is going to matter for this last season. So it probably takes the story hits of where you should know about these characters going into the last season. So I recommend you to watch it, and let me know what you think about it in the comments below. So now I thought we'd have a little fun, and I'm going to make 5 bold predictions about the upcoming season of Star Trek Picard. Some of these I have mentioned before, but again, I don't know who's checked out my videos before, so a lot of people will be hearing this for the first time. So I apologize if I'm repeating myself, but that's why. But let me know in the comments what you think of these, and if you have any predictions about the upcoming season as well. So my first prediction is that there will be a flashback to the Enterprise D this season that includes Tasha Yar. Now, this comes from a couple of things that have happened. One, the actress who played Tasha Yar, who of course was the security chief of the Enterprise D when the Next Generation started and was killed in the first season, she revealed that we will see Tasha in the first season, but it won't be as we expect. And then later, Terry Matalas said that we will see a reference to Tasha Yar, but that Denise Crosby is not involved in this last season, which had a lot of people scratching their heads. Also, in another Comic-Con, Patrick Stewart said to the crowd that he got to be back on the bridge of the Enterprise D. Now, of course, the Enterprise D was destroyed, so unless it's a hologram or a flashback, there's no other way really that, or it's an alternate timeline, which I don't think they would do after just doing that in the second season. So it could be a hologram, but I really think that we're going to get a flashback to the Enterprise D at some point, and maybe we'll see some de-aged actors, and we'll see some silhouettes of characters like Tasha Yar. But I think that we will see a flashback to the Enterprise D, and that means that we will see both the Enterprise D and the Enterprise F this season. Speaking of the Enterprise F, my prediction about that ship is that it's going to get destroyed. Now, we already know that it's going to be decommissioned, and that was recent. We just recently kind of learned that. But even before we learned that, I've kind of had this theory that the Enterprise F will be destroyed. And the reason you do that is because it raises the stakes of the season. Now, we've had two seasons of Picard already, and it's been Picard, saving the universe, saving a race of synthetic people. And you have to keep raising the stakes on a show, especially a show that's serialized. By destroying the Enterprise F, it shows that anything can happen this season. If the Enterprise isn't safe, then nobody is safe. Then anybody can be taken out. And I thought that this is very similar to, if you remember the DS9 episode, The Jem'Hadar. Now, if you recall, in that episode, Cisco and Quark and Nog and Jake were trapped on the other side of the wormhole, and Starfleet had to go rescue them. And the main ship that was used was the USS Odyssey, which was a Galaxy-class ship, and it was destroyed at the end of that battle as they were actually retreating. So that kind of raised the stakes of that villain, showing that even a Galaxy-class ship like the Enterprise could get destroyed. So this villain is just on another level. They did that in Voyager 2 when they first introduced the Jem'Hadar, or not the Jem'Hadar, when they first introduced the species 8472, they took out like 3 Borg ships with like 1 blast from their ship. So it showed that, like, wow, the Borg got taken out like nothing with this new alien species, immediately showing us how dangerous species 8472 was. So that's another reason why I think the Enterprise F will be destroyed this season very early on. And again, it will raise the stakes for everyone. Possibly in that scene, I think will lead into this next prediction that I have, and that is that Deanna Troi will be killed in action this season. Besides raising the stakes, like I just mentioned, which of course killing a character of the original Next Generation cast immediately does, it also allows for like an edgier version of Riker. I spoke about this before on how Riker was always meant to kind of be edgier than he appeared on the Next Generation. And if you look at his appearances on Lower Decks in animated form, that version of Riker is kind of the version that the actor who plays him, Jonathan Frakes, always wanted to play. So I wonder if they will allow him to play that version of Riker in this last season of Picard by killing off his wife, which would definitely do that. Another kind of interesting thing is that if you remember the alternate future in All Good Things, Troi had passed away by the time we got to that alternate future. I don't think that she was destroyed. I don't know if she was killed in action. I don't remember what happened in All Good Things. I should probably watch that episode before the 3rd season of Picard starts. But I know that she wasn't a part of that alternate future. So again, it's I think that we will see the end of Deanna Troi on screen. And as I mentioned, Marina Sirtis, the actress who plays Deanna Troi, has mostly retired from acting. She's moved from LA to London. LA, the California area is where Picard is filmed. Again, if other characters from the Next Generation want to move on to a new project, like has been mentioned in some other videos that I've done, then this allows her character to kind of bow out because the actress doesn't want to do it anymore. So, unfortunately, my prediction is that Commander Deanna Troi will not make it out this season. Now, on to a couple mystery characters that I think are going to show up in season 3. First of all, I think that Picard's son will be revealed this season, but it will not be the one that we are meant to believe. Now, in the last trailer, there's an actor named Ed Speleers who shows up for the first time, and he's even on the poster now for the 3rd season of Picard. If you've seen the latest poster, I'll put it up on screen if you haven't. But I think it's meant to be a red herring that this actor is playing Captain Picard's son. I think rather than him being it, I think that it will actually be actor Thomas Dekker. Now, I mentioned in one of my trailer breakdowns where Thomas Dekker appeared in the trailer. I don't remember which one. It might have been the first trailer, the first real trailer that we had for Star Trek Picard. He is in it for a split second. It looks like he's with Raffi and Worf on that like dirty poor planet, and he only appears for a second. He is an actor that has appeared in a lot of things like Heroes, and he was John Connor in the Sarah Connor Chronicles. But when Thomas Dekker was around 6 years old, I think, he appeared as one of Picard's sons in the Nexus scene in Star Trek Generations, when Picard sees the life that he would have had if he had settled down and moved to London or France or something. So I think it's really interesting that now that actor so many years later is going to be in this final season. And I've already mentioned how, with Geordie's daughters, they reuse the names from All Good Things. If Deanna Troy gets killed in action, that kind of matches up with what happens in All Good Things. If they reuse the actor that appeared as Picard's son in a Vision or whatever happened in the Nexus, and then bring him back as his actual son, that would kind of line up with that synergy that it seems like they're trying to establish. So not only do I think, so this is kind of two predictions, I guess, or a prediction and a half, that we will see Picard's son and that it will not be Ed Speleers. Because again, I think that's too David Marcus, Wrath of Khan. I think it's playing out too much like that. And I don't think they would be so on the nose. So I think that in the end, it will be a red herring and that Thomas Dekker will be shown to be Picard's son. I don't know if Crusher will be his mother, but I do think that it will be revealed that Thomas Dekker is playing his son. And like I mentioned, Thomas Dekker is an established actor. So if they do proceed in with a new series based off characters introduced in Picard, he could definitely play a character. I mean, he's got the chops for it. So again, with my prediction and a half here, let's see if Picard does have a son this season and that it is not Ed Speleers, but it's Thomas Dekker. And then my final prediction for the third season of Picard is that we will get another major series cameo that we don't know about yet, but it won't be from The Next Generation. It will be from Deep Space Nine. There's been a lot of rumors that Deep Space Nine and the history of Deep Space Nine will play a big part this season in Picard, not just with Worf's past, that it will play more of a part in the overall narrative of the season. So I think that will have to do with another character returning. Unfortunately, the list of characters that could return is not as robust as others. We've had a couple of important ones pass away, and then there's a whole issue with Avery Brooks, and I don't even know what's going on with him. I hope that he would be my dream cameo. Of course, I would love to see Sisko come back, and I think that would be a Star Trek break the internet moment if all of a sudden Captain Sisko shows up. He's already returned in the comic books that I've covered on this channel. I'll leave that link to that video in the comments and in the description if you want to check that out. So he could return, but it sounds like there's some other stuff that I'm not privy to that's going to keep him out of it. I think the most likely candidate is probably Kira, who last we saw was a commander. So Commander Kira. Nana Visitor has already reprised the role on Lower Decks, the animated series. So it would be easier for her to, just step into the next studio and kind of reprise her role as Commander Kira. She looks great. I think she could definitely just jump right into the role. And some of these other actors haven't kept up in acting. So as expected, they don't look the same that they did 20, 30, 40 years ago, which is to be expected. I mean, who does? I certainly don't. So, but she looks, I think she could just go right into it and play that role. Because I went so hard on the last prediction, I'm not going to go so hard on this one and say that it's going to be Commander Kira. I do kind of believe it's going to be Commander Kira, but if not her, I think it will be some other DS9 major character cameo. It could be O'Brien, although story-wise, I don't think it works as well. I think that, Kira and her relationship with the Dominion War and Cardassia and stuff like that and Bajor, I think it plays more into a greater narrative. So I think that we might see Commander Kira, but definitely I think we're going to get another member of Deep Space Nine at some point in season 3. So let me know. Those are my predictions. Let me know if you think I'm just crazy. Let me know if you think I'll be 5 for 5, 0 for 5. And then after the season, I'm going to come back and grade myself and hold myself accountable. And also, like I said, let me know what your predictions are if I missed any. So next, I just want to briefly cover the premiere of the debut episode of season 3 of Picard, which happened at Los Angeles. A lot of the cast and crew came out. Patrick Stewart was there. Gates McFadden was there. I noticed that, Patrick Stewart was wearing a very red suit. And I think that Terry Metalis and maybe Todd Stashwick were also wearing red. So I don't know if that was alluding to like the red shirts that maybe they're not going to survive this season, or it could just be that the command color red, alluding to that. But I thought that was interesting. Most of the reviews have been positive, and even the negative ones have not been like really negative. I mean, there's been a lot of negative Star Trek reviews in the past few years, but it didn't seem like they invited a lot of those reviewers to the premiere, which is probably on point. But even the negative reviews were just like it was too nostalgic. It was too heavy in the nostalgia, which might not affect a lot of fans. I think a lot of fans like the nostalgia. I'm fine with it as long as it serves a purpose. I don't just want member berries dropped. I would, I've referenced this before. The guy on the bus in the season 2 of Picard. That's, I think, an example of bad nostalgia. I just dropping a character in for doesn't really mean anything, or and really, if you really think about the plot of the season, doesn't make any sense. So let's not do that. But again, like adding another character from Deep Space Nine, going into the history of the Titan more and stuff like that. That I love. So I'm all for that. But yeah, the reviews were mostly positive. But again, I think that the reviewers were meant to be positive. But we'll see. Make sure that you are subscribed to this channel, because after every episode of Picard is released, I'm going to do a breakdown. And if it is going to be nostalgia heavy, there's going to be a lot of Easter eggs, and you're going to want to know about them. So make sure right now to hit that subscribe button, and that you will know when my videos come out. And you could go watch Picard and then go watch my video right after every week. It'll be a lot of fun for you. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do my breakdown videos like I've normally done in the past, and then release those right after the episodes come out on Thursdays. And then on my podcast the following Monday, I'm going to do more of a review of the episode and what I felt worked and didn't work. So definitely make sure that you're subscribed. And while you're subscribed, make sure that you hit that like button. That really does help me out a lot. It's not a lot for you. It's free to do, but it really does help my videos get out to a lot more people. So if you like my podcast, make sure that you're taking that 1 second and just hitting that like button real quick. And it really does help me out a lot, and it helps support this channel and lets me do more videos, because I also have a full-time job as well. So this isn't easy all the time. So I appreciate any support, and I appreciate those comments. I've gotten a lot of nice comments recently. I don't know if it's because I just started a podcast or what, but it seems like you guys are really opening up, and I really appreciate it. So I love hearing from you, and I love seeing that support. So I just want to take a second and say thank you very much. All right, now after that mushy stuff, there's one more thing I want to talk about Star Trek that I thought was interesting that happened in the following week, and that was an interview with Matt Shakman. Like I mentioned earlier, Matt Shakman was the last director attached to the Star Trek film. He was the director that I was most excited about. He worked on the WandaVision series, and that was very sci-fi and out there and had a lot of crazy concepts. And I thought that he could really bring that to a new Star Trek film. And that's kind of what Star Trek needed, in films at least, and in the series too, is a little bit of crazy, a little bit of like just just out there stuff that that sci-fi that you can really only do in sci-fi. A lot of the stories that were done in the movies, you could do in just any kind of movie, and I don't think that's really taking the genre seriously enough. And I think that Matt Shakman could have done that. But first, he talked about his experience on Star Trek 4. And what he stated was, he said, I had a great time working on Star Trek for a little over a year, working closely with J.J. Abrams and everyone at Paramount, and I love that franchise. That's good to hear. And I love that cast that J.J. put together. And it would have been an unbelievable pleasure to work with them on the 4th installment there. But movies have different journeys and momentums, and schedules are a little bit mercurial. And so when the Fantastic Four opportunity came up, it was just too hard to pass up, and to go back home to Marvel, a place that I worked on WandaVision at, with those people who are wonderful collaborators. So that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think I even hypothesized this in my video when I discussed when he left the project. So it just makes a lot of sense. The Fantastic Four is going to be a huge movie for the MCU. It's going to be a bigger movie than whatever the next Star Trek film is. So it's more exposure for him. It's very sci-fi, so it's still, in the same road. So it's good for him. I don't know what's going on with Paramount and why they're dragging their feet. I tend to believe that Paramount is kind of positioning themselves that they don't even need a movie, but his next comments kind of contradict that. So maybe I shouldn't even say that. But I did kind of talk about that in my podcast last week. So if you want to hear my feelings about what a new film could be for the Star Trek franchise, I suggest you check that podcast out after you listen to this one. But speaking specifically about the film and the future of the film, when somebody asked him about it, he said, I'm probably not really allowed to speak too much about it because I think that they're still working on a version of what I had been working on for the time that I was involved. So that is interesting because according to him, he still thinks that there's going to be a Star Trek film. Again, I don't know if there's going to be, but if he's saying that there is, like maybe there is, and maybe Paramount will announce a new director soon. It sounds like they've had a script that they've been working with for a while now, over a year, because that's how long that this guy was working on the film. So maybe since they've put so much into that script, they're going to make it. But we've seen, recently studios tank whole movies that have been filmed and everything. So maybe they're just going to start over. Again, I don't think they need a film, but if they really like this and they have the right people, heck yeah, go for it. I'll watch it. But I don't know. I don't really think they need it. But let me know what you think about his comments here. I think it's interesting to hear how much he loved the franchise. I've stated multiple times that whoever takes over as director, if there is going to be another film, it can't be just a job. It's got to be something that they love. They have to be a Star Trek fan going into it. They can't be, pronouncing Captain Picard's name wrong, on the first day. Like, what's a Romulan? They can't, you can't hire somebody like that. You have to have somebody that just loves this franchise and understands how to adapt it further. And I'm kind of going to actually discuss that when I discuss The Last of Us, because I think that that's why The Last of Us is so successful, because of course that was a video game franchise first. But yeah, I think that that's what you need with Star Trek. So if the only way I want to see them move forward is with somebody that appreciates the franchise, I don't want them to just make a film to make a film. But let me know what you think in the comments below. So now let's talk about my favorite new series on TV right now, and that is The Last of Us. As I mentioned, I get to talk about 2 episodes this week, 4 and 5. Episode 4, both, spoiler alert, I love both episodes. Episode 4, again, showed another scene from the game, and they fleshed it out, I think, better into this series. The whole subplot line with Kansas City did not exist in the game. The characters of Sam and Henry did. And if you remember the scene where Joel and Ellie are coming into the city and somebody sets a booby trap for him, it's a guy that pretends to be hurt, and then they attack the truck they're driving. That happens in the game too, but it's really just an action scene in the game after that. So it doesn't, you don't show this whole other story fleshed out with how Fedra was affecting the citizens in Kansas City, and and the character of Kathleen and her brother, and all that. I just thought it was great. Both episode 4 and 5, it's just strengthening the bond of those two characters, Ellie and Joel, so organically. They don't just care about each other because they're placed together, which you see so often in stories. Like, we're supposed to believe that these two characters who were polar opposites to start out with now are, love each other just because time has passed and there's no real events or narrative that, necessitates that character development. And The Last of Us is just doing such a good job doing that. And they do that in episode 4 and 5. Another interesting thing about episode 4 and 5, a new character is introduced. He's the right-hand man of Kathleen. I can't remember his name right now, but the actor who plays him, Jeffrey Pierce, played the character Tommy in the game The Last of Us. So that's another example of an actor from the game playing a character in the series. I mentioned in my breakdown of the first episode, the actress who plays the character Marlene is the same actress who plays her in the game, and there will be more actors that show up throughout the series. So I thought that was pretty cool. Episode 5 was just amazing. The story with Henry and Sam happens sort of similar in the game. You don't have that whole backstory of Henry as a collaborator, and again, that I think is meant to show us how we're getting to know Joel a little bit, and that he did some bad stuff before we met him, and Henry obviously did something very bad so that he could save his brother, and ultimately it doesn't even save him, which is the saddest thing. So, those kind of stories added to this narrative, it's so amazing. And it just creates this blueprint for how video games and other things should be adapted. You shouldn't just tell the same story, with like new technology and kind of update it. That's what a lot of people, we're going to update it. That is just a waste of time, a total waste of time. I think The Stand, you probably didn't even see the updated version of The Stand because it was so bad. But I think that's a great example of just an adaptation that not only didn't need to happen, didn't deserve to happen, because you're really not pushing the envelope. You're not adding to anything, to the original lore that happened. You're just kind of capitalizing on what was popular before and using new computer generated effects, which only will impress, 10% of the population, probably, if that. Craig Mazin is the man I think that's responsible mostly for the changes from the game to the series. I know that he's also the man who wrote the Borderlands film. So that's a movie that I believe is getting released this year that is an adaptation of the video game series Borderlands. So I think that his phone is going to be ringing a lot, and he's going to be doing quite a few of these video game adaptations because he just gets it. He just, it's kind of like improv. When you do improv, not that I've done improv, but I watched The Office and Michael Scott's on improv, so that's all I know about improv. But on improv, you are given a scene and you kind of are told, you have to start here and you have to end here. But in the middle, you have a lot of freedom. And it's right there where if you're doing an adaptation, that's where the meat has to be. And that's where The Last of Us lives. They start with, Henry and Sam, or, Bill and Frank, or Tess. And then they just add so much improv, so much meat in between those events that it's just amazing. It's just, like I said, it's my favorite. It's my favorite series on right now. I'm very sad that it's only going to be 2 seasons and that season 2 is probably not going to be as good as season 1. Although, heck, the way this season is going, they may bring me along because, like as I've mentioned before, I'm not a fan of the second game in the series, which will be adapted as the second season of The Last of Us. But the way they do it, maybe I'll like it now. So we'll see. But yeah, I can't say enough things about the way this adaptation is going. It's moving pretty fast. It looks like episode 6, which we will have 5 episodes left. It looks like Tommy will return, played by Gabriel Luna. So this season is moving very fast. And it's too bad the way they're fleshing this out. I really wish they could do more with it because they're doing so much with these characters. The characters were already interesting in the game, and they're just making them so much more interesting. If you follow the game, I'm not going to spoil the end of the first game, which will be the end of the first season. But I think that by showing the bond between Joel and Ellie, and also how, the death of his daughter affected Joel and how now Joel is protecting Ellie, it really substantiates his actions in the final episode or whatever. I think that it does it even more so than the game, definitely. Because in the game, it's kind of just like, again, it's just like these two characters that have been together, but you don't really, besides them, having these like moments of levity where she's got this joke book, which again, she's got in the series as well, where Ellie, tells these jokes at offhand times. You don't really see as much connection as you do between these two characters already on the live action series. So I can't say enough about it. I thought it was really cool that we saw finally a big zombie battle. I know that a lot of people have been waiting for that. The game does have a lot of that, these like swarms of these fast zombies, and we finally got the biggest swarm of zombies. Plus, we got a bloater, which are the large, was that very large infected that comes out of the ground. If you don't know anything about them from the games, you become a bloater, I think, after you survive the infection for like 10 years, because the infection continues to like erode a person's like body. And most people not only die off, they can't operate anymore. They fall to the ground. And it's kind of those ones that you see. We saw one already, I think, in the first episode this season they kind of like mold into the backdrop or the wall or the ground or something and get even grosser. But certain ones that survive the infection, it creates like an armor around them, actually, like a really hard armor, and that's why they were shooting and shooting that character, and they were doing nothing to him. So that character is extremely hard to destroy in the games, and I think usually you just run away from him. You don't even fight him, and that's what Ellie and Joel did in the series, and that's why they survived. But yeah, and again, the child one was the little girl that was the infected clicker was really spooky. They just seem to really know what they're doing with the show, and I can't wait to keep watching it. The one drawback of it airing early is now I don't have an episode to watch this week. So I won't be able to talk about The Last of Us next week on my podcast, but that's why I figured I'd talk about 2 episodes here. But yeah, let me know what you think about the show so far in the comments. I'd really be interested to hear, because I think it's the best show out there right now. And like I said, I was a fan of the games, but not this much. So yeah, I just love it. Well, that's all I got for my show this week. Thank you once again for joining me. Please don't forget to hit that like button. It's the best way to support me. And don't forget to be subscribed and hit the bell so you know when my new videos come out. Thank you once again, and I will see you next time on What Did I Miss?